Bowen was a solitary practitioner until the fateful day he met the Right Reverend Laurie Denman. She leads Chosen Path Church, a local Corellian temple. Laurie was a light on the path that Bowen wished to follow. He completed the 3-year Corellian seminary training and became a senior clergy member of the church. Bowen lives in Jacksonville with his husband of 34 years, who is with us today, 2 dogs, 2 cats, and assorted fish. He's an avid crafter. He's been a hairstylist and massage therapist for 30 years. Reverend Bowen, welcome to our pulpit.
Sound kind of good on paper. Well, y'all have done such a wonderful job with solstice. I don't have much to say, but I am going to talk a little bit from my perspective on the pagan path. The last time I was here was when Jen was inducted as the Director of Lifespan Religious Education. We have several members that come with us, so we've been here several times. We always enjoy showing up. Jen was with us last night when we did our Yule and solstice dinner and watched me have a technical meltdown because we Zoom all of our stuff to our distance members and it wasn't working. And Jen was just being calm and quiet, and I was being a 10-year-old having a meltdown. And she said, "Oh, it's no problem. You just get Jake's phone and you do a hotspot on it, and then you become host on your thing, and then you turn it over to," and she did it all. And so this morning when I was printing out my presentation and it didn't work, and it jammed, and then the plug came undone, and then the printer said it needed ink. I thought, what would Jen do? But instead I just screamed for my husband to come and fix it, and he did. So here we are. So greetings and happy holidays. We're in the full swing of a variety of winter festivals, many of which were mentioned here. They're celebrated around the world. So most of you are familiar with Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Diwali, and perhaps Yule. And that occurs around the winter solstice. And don't forget Festivus for the rest of us. Thank you, Jerry Seinfeld. This morning we're going to explore my favorite holiday. So Yuletide greetings and happy solstice. I celebrate Yule as one of the 8 Sabbats on most pagan calendars. The word Yule is derived from ancient Norse words for the god Odin. Yule's ancient origins are from the Germanic people of Germany and Scandinavia. But today, many pagans celebrate Yule throughout the world. Yule celebrations typically coincide with the astronomical event of winter solstice. And as people have mentioned earlier, solstice is the longest night of the year. It's made up of 2 words, sol, the Latin word for sun, and the word stit, to mean stand still. The words combined into solstitium, meaning the sun sits still. And it was shortened to solstice around the 14th century. Winter solstice, the longest night, and has a few days around the solstice when the sun rises and sets, but it looks like it's sitting still. Normally it'll climb one direction or the other. So that's the sit still time, about 3 days, and then it continues on its northern path. A winter solstice is important to Yule because the earth is at the tipping point between the darkest times and the slow return to light. It is these still times in which we pagans reflect and rest and celebrate the return of the light despite being in the throes of deep winter, which is theoretical here in Florida where anything under 65 is frigid. And just to throw in a twist, at this time of the year in the southern hemisphere, they're experiencing the summer solstice and the longest days of the year. So they'll be throwing a few shrimp on the barbie and slathering on their SPF sunscreen. Now, historically, Yule was celebrated as a 2-month festival beginning in early mid-November. The ancient Norsemen of Scandinavia celebrated Yule from the winter solstice all the way through January, and it was in recognition of the return of the sun. Families would bring home large logs, which became known as Yule logs. And they would light them on fire and feast until they burned out, which often took 12 days. A bit of a stump was saved for the next year's Yule log, and they used that to light the next log. Now everyone buys a Yule log from Publix and wonders why they're eating a chocolate stump. That's the origin. The cycles of Earth, Sun, and stars were important to the people who lived intricately connected to the Earth's seasons. Our ancestors learned the cycles of light and darkness, warmth and cold, living and dying. They celebrated each turn of the seasons. Yule was centered around the return of the sun and the promise of longer days. Even though winter was just really taking hold, the assurance of the summer return was a reason to celebrate. In many traditions, it was the god who sacrificed himself at Samhain in October, the last harvest, that made his way through the underworld in the embrace of the goddess, and then was reborn at solstice as the child of light. People lit fires to guide his way and ensure the sun's return. Today, on the solstice, between the 20th and 22nd of December, pagans celebrate Yule on one night because it's rather hard to ask for 2 months off. Hello, human resources, I'd like 2 months off to go burn a giant tree stump. Modern pagans carry on the same deep connectedness to the earth and its cycles. We pay homage to the changing seasons and use them to remind us that our lives, both physical and spiritual, flow in the same cyclical patterns of nature. From earliest times, we've looked to the stars to show us our past, our present, and our future. Ancient and modern people realize Earth is a small cog in the great cosmos surrounding it. We have a saying, as above, so below. As the universe, so the soul. As within, so without. Our connectedness to the rhythms of the universe is abundant and powerful in our daily lives. These cycles are teachers of the eternal nature of deity. Winter solstice is that pivotal moment of the year. At the pinnacle of the dark half of the year, with months to go into spring, we are reminded that at our darkest moments, we must remember the light will return. That everything in life has a season that shall pass. We know that any darkness is only there for a time before once again we're flooded with the joy of a new beginning and a fresh lightness. Now, many stories have been told during Yule to pass along the wisdom of being in tune with the rhythm of life, but my favorite is the oak and the holly king. In pagan culture, there are a few universally accepted themes, but many paths see this story as an explanation of the seasons, both within and without. The holly king lived in the north. He wore a thick winter cloak and a holly wreath. In his hand he carried a staff made of beautiful, sturdy holly branch. The oak king wore only a wreath of oak leaves. This was all he needed, for his home was in the south and was always warm and the sun shone brightly. The two kings are brothers, but they're also rivals who battle each other through the year, alternating the conquering of each other as the seasons shift. The dates on which the battle is won depends on the tradition, but in many forms of Wicca, the Oak King takes over at the winter solstice, while the Holly King ascends at the summer solstice. These are the Sabbats that technically mark the sun's waxing and waning relative to Earth. On the day of midsummer, the Oak King was at his strongest, but it was the day that the Holly King came forth from the underworld. From that moment on, the days grow shorter and shorter. The leaves fell from the trees, the heat of the summer left, and the cold of the winter swept over the land. But in the dark of winter, the Oak King would be born into the world when his brother, the Holly King, was at his strongest, the day of midwinter. As the tale goes, on midwinter's day, the Oak King arrives at his brother's palace, which is decorated with fragrant green fir branches and red holly berries. There his brother, King Holly, sat on his throne. The Oak King walked up and said, "My dear brother, my people are not happy. We want the light and the sun back to our lands." The Holly King replied, "The people must first learn to be frugal with what they have. They must learn that there is also a time of moderation and reflection, in which they can make new plans for the year to come." But the Oak King knew there was no time for that. He said, "If I have to fight for the return of the light, I will do it." And he got up and walked towards the throne. The Holly King immediately jumped up and fought his brother. In one last blow, the defeated Holly King lay wounded on the ground. The Oak King ordered his brother to give him the throne and said, "My dear brother, if you want the dark days back, you come to me in June, and we'll measure your strength again. And even though I have defeated you now, you are my brother, and I love you." The Holly King answered, "I'll be there on the summer solstice. Look for me on the highest mountains, and if I win the fight that day, I will give you all the wisdom of how your people can survive the dark days of the year, because I love you too. Take the crown now, my brother. Even if you are now king, my cold has not yet left, and the snow will cover the land. But I know from now on your power of light reigns until my time of darkness wins in midsummer." From that day on, the brothers Oak and Holly battle and claim their share of the year. In the light months, there are feast and abundance and growth. In the dark months, there is a time of rest, reflection, and making plans for the new year. Everyone now had the knowledge of light and darkness, and lived happily ever after. I may have added that part. We learn from this story how easy we revel and grow in the lightness of times, when things are plentiful and easy. And yet we must also prepare for the coming dark, the cold times, when the barren earth does not sustain us so easily. By storing away our harvest, both physically and spiritually, we can survive the dark times and contemplate what we have achieved and learned throughout the year. We plan what we will do with the return of the light and how we will build and renew our earth and our spirits. We rejoice at the first signs of spring, and we are glad to have this time of rest, of the need to stay closer to hearth and home, and to celebrate our family and friends. Each half of the year holds a value and a treasure. We must learn to appreciate the plentiful and lean times, knowing these cycles will come full circle many times in our lives. There can be no light without dark. It is the contrast between the two that makes each possible. Neither can exist without the other. Now in our modern world, the hustle and bustle seems to be 24/7, 365 days of the year, and it's hard to imagine a downtime or a slower pace. It makes it all that much more important to carve out niches of time and space to slow down and reflect. To be still and enjoy a moment of quiet nothingness. A wise man once said, "You should meditate 20 minutes a day unless you're busy. Then you should sit for an hour." Many traditions of Yule have been incorporated into a holiday known as Christmas. Decorating with boughs of holly, bringing in a tree festooned with glittering lights like the stars in the heavens. The evergreen is an ancient symbol of the eternal. Feasting, singing, and even Santa Claus have origins in pagan practices. Saint Nicholas is commonly linked to Odin, the father of the gods in Germanic mythology. He was depicted as a white-bearded man with magical powers. Yule was a time when Odin led a hunting party in the sky known as the Wild Hunt on an 8-legged horse. Children would leave their boots by the chimney filled with carrots and hay to feed the horse. Legend has it whenever Odin flew by, he would leave gifts by their boots. Frau Hulda is the Germanic goddess of winter. In German folk legend, she would fly through the night and give gifts to children. In drawings, she is dressed in red and uses the chimney to deliver her gifts. Some Germanic traditions involve leaving food and milk for Hulda on December 24th, which is known as Mother's Night. Pagans light candles, feast, and exchange gifts in celebration of the god's return and of the light he brings with him. In the deepest winter, the hope and renewal of life is welcomed. Now, I hope this gives you some insight into how and why we celebrate the Yule and winter solstice. As I end my talk, I'd like to perform a small act of power with your help. And what we're going to do is infuse this candle. Oh, it's come away, I think. Yeah. And if it doesn't, there we go. infuse this candle with our energy, and then we're going to ask you to take this back home with you, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. As I light the candle, I want you to concentrate on the flames. Concentrate on these flames, whichever one takes your fancy, and see them flicker and sway. Now, in my path, we learned that lighting a candle is our connection to the goddess, the eternal mother. You may call this God, universal life force, or the divine. Focus your thoughts on the joys of family, friends, and the connection to the divine spark within you. Enjoy the quiet stillness of watching the candle flame. Feel how it stills the mind and softens the heart. Become aware of the positive energy around you in this room. Feel it moving towards the candles, suffusing them with love and joy. Feel the energy surrounding and swelling the candle in a ball of white, glimmering light. It is an aura of pure love and energy. Now close your eyes for a moment and imagine that ball of light expanding out into a larger and larger ball that surrounds the stage and then continues to expand and surround the auditorium and all who are in it. Feel the energy swirling around you and enjoy the sensation. Now imagine, if you will, that you're holding your own unlit candle. With your mind's eye, look at it and pull the swirling energy around you into your heart. Imagine a beam of that energy leaving your heart and lighting the flame of your candle. See the flame burning strongly and brightly with this energy. Know that this flame is a representation of your connection to the divine spark in your soul. This is the eternal part of you which is everything, above and below, within and without. Let the image fade, knowing you can always revisit your imaginary candle. This energy can be tapped into whenever you need it. It is your connection to the greatness of the divine energy. Now slowly open your eyes and come back to the here and now. So we've used these candles in our imagery to create an energetic construct in your mind. And that's been infused with all of your great energy here today. All of your thoughts of family, friends, and loved ones. And you may return to that image whenever you want to connect to what you felt during our brief meditation. So when you go home, find a candle and use this during the winter solstice, which is somewhere between the 20th and 22nd. This year, it's on the 21st at 4:47 Eastern Standard Time. So on the eve or near that evening, hold your special candle and sit quietly and bring your imaginary candle to mind. Let the energy flow into the candle you're holding, and once you've infused your special candle with that energy, light it and spend a few moments meditating on the things that make you happiest during this year. However you celebrate, spend a quiet moment remembering the joyous parts of the season. You can light this candle any time of the year when you want to connect to these energies. And I'm going to end with one of my favorite quotes from Eckhart Tolle. Look at a tree, a flower, a plant. Let your awareness rest upon it. How still they are, how deeply rooted in being. Allow nature to teach you stillness. Blessed Yule and happy solstice.
Thank you, Reverend Bowen, for making the Yule and solstice so real for us.